for the next question, on your campaign website,
Yep.
you state your opposition to funneling money to well-connected weapons manufacturers and energy corporations who selectively involve us in conflicts that benefit them.
Yep.
Are there any specific corporations you are referring to?
There.
Countless, but just to name a few.
Well, I mean, for example, let's go back to the 2000s, right, with Bush and Cheney.
Right.
So, Bush and Cheney invaded Iraq on the pretext that there were weapons of mass destruction, but none were found.
Yep.
That's true.
So that was misleading information, whether it was intentional or unintentional, it was misleading. So we went into war, the country was run asunder, and then of course Reconstruction, that is a very lucrative business. So when the Reconstruction and all of those, rebuilding the oil platforms comes under Halliburton, which Dick Cheney, for example, was on the board of Halliburton. He was a vice president. Okay, that is one prime example. But the problem is those don't come out until much later on.
Yeah.
So right now, the big example is Ukraine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
So is that going to come out? Are the specifics going to come out later? Absolutely, they are.
We just don't know them yet.
We just don't know them, but. Again, there are weapons manufacturers. When we give foreign aid, when we're giving $100 billion to Ukraine, we're not giving it to them to stimulate their economy. We're giving it to them so they can buy tanks, and bullets and missiles, right? They're not making them there.
Well, in many circumstances, they actually buy the weapons and they send it to them.
Yes.
Yeah, directly from the.
Correct. So either which, it just funnels in. So that's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I was just discussing this with somebody. Gas right now is $7 a gallon.
Yeah.
Okay. So why is gas $7 a gallon? Well, it's supply and demand.
Yeah.
So Biden, number one, has placed a moratorium on domestic drilling. So there's no oil that we're drilling from here. We have to import it, number one. Number two, our national oil reserves, he has depleted.
Yeah.
Okay? So we have none. We can't drill for more. Stuff that we had saved up has been depleted. Number three, Ukraine was a conduit for oil and gas.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, now Europe is getting a third of its oil and gas from Azerbaijan instead of from Ukraine. Supply and demand.
Yeah.
And then Saudi Arabia sees its opportunity and says, okay, so if I pump less oil, that will then decrease the supply, increase the demand, and I can charge more for it, right? So the domestic companies, so a lot of people, weapons manufacturers, oil corporations, would love to see the war go on indefinitely.
Yeah, well, that's why Biden gave him the fist bump.
So, and again, I know a lot of people are exasperated that the federal government, or any government, state government, no longer represents us.
Yeah.
And that's why the slogan of my campaign has become enough. And we've all had enough, particularly about things like this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
So, many of your policies deviate substantially from the standard Republican platform, including your stances on bailouts and corporate welfare. Do you think there is room for this type of disagreement in today's Republican Party?
So you say it so the short answer is yes, there is room for disagreement because I've not been excommunicated from the party like you would be from the Democratic Party, for example. If you said, I think we should maybe not continue the war in Ukraine. You're done.
Yeah, you're done.
You're done, right? You're canceled and you're done.
Yeah.
So, but that said, have I had people, be upset with me? Absolutely they have, okay? But it's one of those things where you tolerate it because, somebody said certain Republicans are really good at sacrificing a good situation to get the perfect situation.
Right.
And then ultimately getting no situation.
Yeah.
Okay? And what I say is, the Republican Party that I grew up with is very different from the Republican Party that I see now. So for the last 20 years at least, starting with Bush and Cheney, okay, it deviated, and I would say that's why I'm a disenfranchised Republican. Why did it deviate? I grew up in an immigrant household, okay? And my parents, Armenian immigrants, they came from the unrest in the Middle East in the 70s. And you guys are too young to remember, but George Dukmajian, an Armenian guy, was governor of California in the 80s, from 82 to 1990. And it was impossible for you to be Armenian in California in the 80s with Governor George Dukmajian and not be a Republican.
Yeah. Right.
But back then it meant law and order, safe neighborhoods, clean streets. You come to this country, you assimilate, you work hard, you make something of yourself, and then you stay out of other people's businesses. Lower taxes, smaller government, done. That's what it used to be.